the Madman! Welcome to the top custom cards of the week. This week we jumped right into submissions, which included Saviors of Uldum cards. Getting started with Nexus Stalker, a 3-mana 4/2 neutral, Death Rattle, transform adjacent minions into Nexus Stalkers. Design 5 stars, balance 4 stars. Clearly the best option for you is to have a Nexus Stalker on the board, and then hopefully it can attack, and then you have 1/1 minions next to it. Perhaps the best situation I can think of is you have the rushing lackey, you play the Nexus Stalker, you rush the Nexus Stalker, and then it dies, dealing 4 damage, and your 1/1 becomes a 4/3. That's some great value. And I did say 4/3 because I feel like the balance is a bit weak as a 4/2. I think it should be improved to a 4/3 because it's pretty restricting in that you will just nerf yourself if you actually have big minions. On top of that, 3-mana 4/3 vanilla stat line is pretty weak. And on top of that, your opponent can just always kill the adjacent minions first and then kill the Nexus Stalker, effectively making it so you only play the 3-mana 4/3. I actually think 3-mana 4/3 would still perhaps not be played in Constructed, but would be a more reasonable stat line. It is a pretty big potential payoff in that it's +3/+2 to a 1/1 minion if you can attack with your Nexus Stalker, but that would be the tough part. Sanguine. 0-mana Warlock spell, destroy a minion with more health than your hero. Design 3 stars, balance 1 star. This is a very interesting idea, and I want to consider the pitch for this card right now. It's like, hey, I've got a great idea for a card. It's a Warlock spell, and for 0 mana, you can destroy a minion. Wow. So yeah, certainly you would need a pretty big drawback for that to be balanced, given that the current Warlock removal spell, Siphon Soul, costs 6 mana. And that is quite a drawback, with more health than your hero. In a normal game of Hearthstone, you might not even see a minion which has more than 3 health or 4 health, which would mean you'd have to be on the verge of death to be able to exsanguinate something from a aggressive deck, which is presumably the deck that you'll be on a low health total against anyways. Even killing a giant, which has 8 health, you'd have to be at 7, which is crazy to think about. You're just a fireball away from death then. Unfortunately, this can't really be balanced too much because, I mean, it's at 0 mana already. I humored the idea of maybe putting draw a card on it as well, because the requirement is to destroy a minion. It probably would still be underpowered at destroy a minion with more health than your hero, draw a card. So maybe the easier way to put it is just put it onto a well-statted minion. Similar to how a Mega Devastator is a well-statted minion at a 4-mana 4/5 with, this casual battle cry deal 10 damage, Exsanguinate could also be put on a 4-mana 4/5. Or 3-mana 3/4, or a 5-mana 5/6, something like that. Muscle Flexin. It's a 1-mana warrior spell. Reveal a minion from your deck, give it +3/+3. Did you think that hand buff was weak? Well, how about a card that buffs 1 card in your deck that you may never draw? Now that's weak. Design 3 stars, balance 1 star. I think the idea is good. It's okay, buffing 1 card in your deck. The thing is, this is a very minor effect, similar to Exsanguinate, so I have to give about the same advice. You want to put this onto a well-statted minion, because this card wouldn't even be run at 0 mana. Given that this card wants to be played early, maybe on a 1-mana 2/1, 2-mana 3/2, or 2/3, something like that. There's also a problem that it's a bit difficult to balance because it's very high rolly in nature. If you play this on turn 1 and you actually draw a 2-mana card and it has +3/+3, that's an insane start. The RNG of that is extremely unlikely, but has the potential to create a bad taste. Pelvis Tresley, 6-mana 5/5 legendary for neutral. Battle Cry, discover a Battle Cry. It replaces the card text on all minions in your hand. Design 2 stars, balance 3 stars. It's wildly creative, but it's a card that has way too much RNG on it because it's super feast or famine. Did you come up with an excellent Battle Cry? Well, then you pretty much win the game. If you came up with a bad Battle Cry, well, if you built your deck to be abusive enough, maybe you still won the game. Because there are a lot of card texts on minions which are negative, most famously of which is probably the Darkness, which is a 4-mana 20/20. If you were to be able to silence that effect in your hand, then you have a 4-mana 20/20. This is better than silencing all of your minions in your hand, though. It's give them all a battle cry, and if you give them all a really insane battle cry, for example, Emrys's battle cry of doubling the health and attack of all minions in your hand, well, that's pretty insane. There are some cards in the game which are mainly used for their battle cry, like, for example, summon a 5/5 or summon a 6/6. What if all of your cards in your hand were cards that couldn't attack? Suddenly, after playing Pelvis Tresley, they also summoned a 5/5. That's insane. You could, in theory, become Jiraxis each time you play a minion. So basically, too wide a variance for a card. And now for our Uldum inspired section. We start with Undying Kat, a 6-mana Warlock Beast. It's a 1/1. Reborn, 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 reborn. A play on the idea that cats have 9 lives. Design 2 stars, balance 1 star. So first of all, I will present the idea this is basically already a card. It's Dreadsteed. Old Dreadsteed just came back immediately, similar to Undying Kat, but had to be changed because of Defile and cards that constantly did things. Undying Kat stops after 8 iterations, and I'd say that the way that this is templated is cute, but also not optimal. Probably better written as Reborn, and then parentheses, 8 left, exclamation mark, and parentheses, similar to jnZaneHD's effect. But there's also one big problem with this card, and while discussing with chat, I learned about localization of Hearthstone in different languages. One of the cards in Hearthstone is 9 lives right now, and across different cultures, cats have different amounts of lives. Did you know this? In some cultures, cats have 7 lives. This would translate poorly into other countries and cultures. So finally, given that Dreadsteed was at 4 mana and didn't even see much play, this card is horrifically overpriced and should cost 4 mana. But on top of that, you know, many slew of design faults and the fact that this would just pretty much be old Dreadsteed, it's not great. The Plot Thickens. Warlock spell at 7 mana. Shuffle a copy of your deck into your deck. This card was created shortly after the quest for Warlock was revealed, where you need to draw 20 cards. Design 5 stars, balance 1 star. I like the idea, and certainly it's a play on the other card, Plot Twist, which would likely see play in a Plot Thickens deck as well. Shuffling a copy of your deck into your deck is an awesome idea, but it really doesn't do much. It's very similar to Dead Man's Hand, where it shuffled a copy of your hand into your deck, and one could argue that's better because you could trim your hand into cards that you actually wanted back into your deck, but you're not really in control of what's remaining in your deck, whereas you are in control of what's remaining in your hand. 7 mana is a gross overcosting of this card. Should you simply buff this card to 5 mana? No, you should buff this card to 3 mana. I think this card is a fair effect for 3 mana, similar to Dead Man's Hand at 2 mana, but plus 1 mana, it has the potential to shuffle much more of your deck into more of your deck, but really doesn't matter how big your deck is if you're just doubling your deck. This has even been done previously on a Priest Legendary before, Archbishop Benedictus, and that was 7 mana and also gave you a 4/6. My idea for this card is simple. Either make it 3 mana, or attach it into a body like Archbishop Benedictus. In this case, it would be kind of a nod towards Archbishop Benedictus if you put it on a 7 mana 4/6. Unfortunately, you lose the clever naming of the Plot Thickens. So, trade-offs. Dawn of the Living Murlocs, a 3 mana shaman spell, which shows off Reborn by giving your Murlocs Reborn. Design 4 stars, balance 4 stars. I think this is pretty close to the mark, which is why I gave the balance a 4 star. I think the design is plain, but given that we're just designing Uldum cards right now, I guess it doesn't have to be too flashy. I would say it's fair to compare this with Soul of the Forest, which summons 2/2s for all of your minions that die. You'd obviously be playing this in a Murloc deck, and I would say that the Murlocs, when they're reborn, are about equivalent to 2/2s, so therefore it should cost 4 mana as well. Now here's the interesting metagame twist though. If you're printing a card that is trying to buff an archetype. For example, if Underbelly Angler had not been printed yet, Dawn of the Living Murlocs could conceivably be costed at 3 mana, and this would be the card that pushes the Murloc theme. Which is why I only gave the balance a 4 instead of the 3 that I would get when I normally suggest nerfing a card. But this is a really specific archetype and timing thing. In another world where Underbelly Angler isn't a card, sure, this could be 3 mana, but not now. This needs to be 4. It's worth mentioning, just as a fun design thing, that I do agree with the epic rarity on this card, even though the card text is rather simple. It's a really specific effect, which you don't want to be seeing too often for newer players, so it should certainly not be a common or rare card. Revenge Dummy. 4 mana, 2/2, Stealth Reborn, Mech. Design 2 stars, balance 3 stars. I think that mechs can't have stealth, while Magnetize is in the game. As simple a thought as that. Yes, there's Coppertail Imposture, but that card has stealth for only 1 turn. If you were to allow a stealth mech minion in the game, then you could simply magnetize everything you wanted onto it and then just hit your opponent for 1 punch. And then they would die. And I think it's very unfun to have a uninteractable stealth card on your opponent's side, which just keeps growing. Balance-wise though, not actually bad. It's actually weak. Strangely enough, I think the design is bad because it's too potentially degenerate, but yet balance-wise, I think it's too weak. I think this card could be buffed to only costing 3 mana, but not with the mech tag. So this card probably got upvoted because the idea of the dummy coming to take revenge is a really flavorful one, and the card art matches Revenge Dummy really well. The main problems, though, are that this card of a Revenge Dummy doesn't really evoke ideas of it being stealthy or it being reborn. So this is an instance where you can get value out of your designs by taking the art and the name of Revenge Dummy and putting it onto a different card that would perhaps be more flavorful for this, also removing the problem of having the Stealth Reborn card with a mech. And then you create a new card that's a 3 mana 2/2 with Stealth and Reborn with no mech tag. And there you have it. We have Evil Recruitment, the Rogue Legendary quest. Summon 10 lackeys. Reward Evil Helpline. The Evil Helpline is a 2 mana hero power which calls on this turn's helpline. Similar to Dr. Boom, you rotate randomly through these departments. They do all of the things that the lackeys do currently, and there will probably be more lackeys released, and that's fine. As more lackeys get released, I think you can simply edit this hero power to include those lackeys as well. Design 4 stars, balance 1 star. I like the idea of summoning lackeys, and I find the idea of this being just cycling through the lackeys for 2 mana. That makes sense. Hero powers normally call upon a 0 mana ability for 2 mana, and most of the lackey battlecry effects are worth about 1 mana, so they still cost 2 mana. Seems good. I'd say the balance is drastically off because summoning 10 lackeys is enormously difficult to do. By the time you did that and you completed your quest, it'd be like a monumental effort simply to buff your hero power a small amount. I'd say that the right number is either 3 or 4, and I'm leaning towards 4, but could be 3. Polento says, I wouldn't run this quest even if it was instantaneous. What, you wouldn't pay 1 mana to turn your hero power into the Evil Helpline? This just in, Colento has been declined from the Hearthstone balance team. You pay a card for this effect, not worth. That's so insane! Not worth! That's like saying it's not worth the Dr. Boom Mad Genius effect to get these effects. Okay, that's a little bit, that's stretching because obviously the Dr. Boom Mad Genius effects are better than these, but not by that much. I mean, if Colento's opinion is to be taken, then perhaps 3 lackeys is a better spot than 4 lackeys. And that leads us to the trump card of the week. Lady, the Hunter 2 mana 3/2 beast. After you empty your hand, draw this from your deck. Legendary, by the way. Nice, clean, easy, and really follows the Hunter flavor, a return back to the Hunter flavor of emptying your hand, being aggressive in order to get a bonus. And I think that this is really appropriate. If you happen to be unlucky and draw this, then it's a 2 mana 3/2 beast. That's bad, but not too bad. And it's a cool reward for emptying your hand. I think this card is very similar to Quick Shot. It's the other way around though. You empty your hand in order to draw this card. Usually when you've emptied your hand, you're kind of on dire straits, so having the extra fuel, 2 mana 3/2, seems really reasonable to me. There's an interesting interaction with this card in Dire Frenzy, which is if Lady is in your hand and a Dire Frenzy is in your hand, and those are the last 2 cards in your hand, you play Lady and you play Dire Frenzy on Lady, and you'll get to shuffle 3 ladies into your deck with +3/+3, which you'll immediately draw. Now, I don't need to tell you how unlikely it is for a deck running Lady to also have Dire Frenzy in your hand, right? So I'm not really too concerned with the idea of instantly drawing 3 2 mana 6/5s in that situation. So I love this card. I feel like it fits really deeply into Hunter flavor. Raise your Smorks, because that's the deck that this will go into. I think it's about time we got a more Smorky Hunter deck.